up, no second, no third, first gear.
What's up, Nitro gang? I hope you watched the last video because the results on the first gear speed test I got on this Savage literally blew me away. I'm gonna put some clips here of the speed runs I did with this Savage.
Oh! That was scary. Brakes! Wow! 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 44! Oh my!
I also proved that it is in fact locked in first gear. So the transmission is still open as I had it during the last video. The upper portion of the transmission case is right here, right? We have the steel spur gear and we have the 3 metal gears inside. This video, we're gonna be trying to adjust the second gear and the third gear clutches. I've already taken a good look at the HPI owner's manual, and just so you know, you do have to remove the entire transmission unit from here. We will be doing that later. I just want to talk a little bit about the competition and the other variant of this Savage from, I would say, this specific time frame. Some of you already know there was a gas version of this exact truck, except it did not have a nitro motor. It came with a 15cc 2-stroke gas engine. Actually quite innovative for the time. I think even to this day, that makes the HPI Savage Octane the only 8th scale gas RC on the market. Unfortunately, it pretty much was terrible in terms of speed, and I'll explain my reasons for that in a little bit. And it was about $200 more expensive than this, if you could even find one. I do a lot of RC research, and Big Squid RC, some of the websites I check, and of course they did a really good review on the Savage Octane. While reading that article, of course, I only cared about the top speed of the Savage Octane, and it was only 36 miles an hour, guys. They only got 36 miles an hour from a 3-speed. I got 44 miles an hour from just the first gear. In the last video, I quoted a statement from Wikipedia, and I honestly didn't believe it at the time, but the statement said, the fastest nitro truck world record is held by a Savage. Wikipedia didn't say what modifications there were. All it said is the Savage. I don't know which model it is, but it is my understanding it probably was this one, because this longer XL chassis, which is about 1.5 inches longer than the regular Savage 4.6X, is very good for high speed stability. You know, when I hit 44 on this in first gear, I wasn't even nervous. I was actually more scared about how strong the brakes are when I applied them, so I didn't do a front flip. But of course you could adjust that. The stability on this at high speed was honestly very remarkable. I thought it was going to be terrible because these soft tires, right? But it was good. I feel safe about this. I think even at 60, 70 with normal mods, you know, including like wheels and stuff like that, this thing will be insane. I mean, that's something we're gonna have to test out. The only thing the Wikipedia statement said about the Savage being the fastest monster truck to date is the fact that it had modified wheels and gearing. Now, if I hit 44 miles an hour, stock running, you know, old, you know, 25% fuel right here, which honestly, I'm also very surprised with this fuel. It performed very well. So I guess Maxxi's fuel wasn't lying about older championship wins. So 1/8 scale Mexico national champion. I could read this for like an hour. There's so much on this list right here with their championship wins. It's kind of insane. I honestly kind of like that fuel. Let me put the speed I got on this in perspective for you. My 30cc Rovan Baja running slightly larger tires also topped out at 44 miles an hour. And this is a much smaller RC with a nitro motor. You might be asking yourself, hey, how come a gas RC that's so much bigger is actually slower? And how come the regular Savage Octane is so much slower than this? It comes down to RPM. This engine screams. It's rated at about 39,000 max RPM. The regular gassed engines on Rovans and any real gas RC, they will never hit over 20,000. Don't expect to see even over 15,000 on, you know, a larger engine. That's basically their maximum operating RPM. It really comes down to RPM. Now, this 3-speed transmission and the extremely high RPM of this motor, which is, you know, a good nitro engine, is what gets us the speed. That's really what it's all about. Of course, when you're talking about torque, the Octane model here does have a lot more torque. I personally don't care about that. I like the speed. For me, As long as it hits, 40 something, I'm happy. Now, my goal here is to get it to shift to second and third gear. And based on my current performance of hitting 44 in first gear, I don't see why we shouldn't be able to hit over 60 on this. I'm gonna probably have to claim the world record on a stock Savage if I actually could probably hit 60 on this exact model with no other modifications running old nitro fuel. So right now, let's take out this transmission and then we're gonna take a look inside, see what it's all about. It's time to go to work, guys. I'm going to be following the original HPI Savage owner's manual for this particular truck. I'll put a link to the PDF in the description if you're curious. On page 35 of the manual, there's a pretty good description on what to do to adjust the transmission. So I'm going to be following this manual. I'll be putting pictures along the line, when I come up with something interesting and I feel like you guys need to know. The upper part of the transmission cover is off, including the steel spur gear. We could see the 3 metal gears here. Removing the transmission is actually quite easy. Let me do it now. From the top view, I just want to confirm once again, the third gear, not engaged. You could see how I could spin it freely. That means the clutch is not engaged. The second gear, also not engaged. The first gear, it's engaged because if I spin it like this, the whole truck moves forward. So here's your proof on how I know that I got 44 miles an hour in first gear. I did not hear any of the shifting going on while I was driving, so, I highly doubt that it was second gear. Although 44 miles an hour for first gear is really, really high. I was honestly very surprised myself. Many of you are probably thinking, well, there's an access hole right over here. You see this little rubber grommet here? Well, this actually only gives you access to this third gear. Where I'm pointing to now is the set screw to adjust the third gear shifting mechanism. Now, since the second gear is in the middle, obviously, we don't have access at all. This entire unit has to come out. But no big deal. It's actually quite easy. Let's see if I could just do it like this with some pliers. You could use your hands, obviously, but for us, we're just gonna do pliers. You guys see that? Boom. The whole thing is literally out of the car right now. This is the entire transmission of the Savage XL. Surprisingly enough, the first gear is plastic. Of course, it's not regular plastic. It's probably some kind of Durlin, nylon, or whatever, but it's not metal, which is pretty interesting because this thing is supposed to have all metal gears. I guess they figured first gear will probably strip, and maybe it'll be cheaper to replace a plastic one rather than the metal ones. I'm not sure what HPI was thinking, but this is the entire transmission unit. We have to disassemble everything here to get to the clutches. I'm going to be using some loose leaf here as my work surface because I feel like we're going to learn something. Either this thing is going to shift or not. First, we're going to remove both of the ball bearings on either side. They're the same, so there's no way you can mess this up when you are reassembling it. The next thing we got to do is remove this C-clip all the way here at the end of the shaft. There's more than one way to do this, but it's in your best interest to use a C-clip tool like this. Unfortunately, this shaft is a little bit too wide. So hopefully it works. If it doesn't, we'll just use a flathead screwdriver or pliers. No big deal. Almost there. Almost there, yep. And it's off. You guys see that? Gotta have the right tools for the job. Next thing. Gear slides out. There is a pin here. We're gonna remove the pin. There's pretty much no way you could misassemble this when you're putting it back together. The first gear system slides out. You know what? I might keep it on here for now because it really doesn't matter. I'm gonna keep it on this for now. We're not removing the first gear at all. It's pretty much a fixed gear. I have to now remove the third gear. So the only way to do this is to remove these 2mm set screws on the shaft. This is literally what's holding this entire system in place. The first thing is just a small set screw. It did have thread lock on it. And then we should have a longer screw there. A cross pin, I think these are called. I don't really particularly care about what the names of these things are. As long as we can take it out, put it back together, it should be good. This is a longer pin. Basically goes in right through this axle, and that is what secures it. Okay, now the clutch itself should just slide off as an entire unit here. Right? Yep, there we go. This is the clutch mechanism itself. There's a bearing, These are just basic metal gears. They only go in one way, so it's no big deal. I could always look up how to reassemble it later. The third gear clutch. The instructions say this little set screw, you can barely see it in there, hopefully the light is good. It says it should be 5 turns past line A. I'm not really sure what they mean by line A. I think they're talking about where this like little line stops over here, or they're talking about where the threads themselves start. Either way, it says 5 turns past line A. When you go counterclockwise, which is turn to the left, right? You want to turn this way, that's counterclockwise. That is gonna make sure that it engages earlier. What happens is there's a spring inside, and this is gonna release tension on that spring, and the clutch mechanism itself should shift earlier. I'm not gonna really listen to the 5 turns thing, since I know this doesn't shift at all. I'm gonna go all the way to the beginning of where I think what they mean by line A is. So this is as counterclockwise as possible, meaning hopefully this thing shifts into third. Let's remove the second gear so we can access the second gear clutch. Okay, so the second gear clutch, yeah, it clearly is a little bit different. You can tell that there is a cutout, and I think this is what they mean by line A. The third gear clutch didn't have what they mean by line A, so here I can understand what they're talking about. The factory setting for this is 3.5 turns in from line A. So let's look at the way it is right now. It actually looks like it's way out, meaning it should be shifting at this point, and it's not. I'm literally almost at line A, and I only really just did about a half of a turn. This leads me to believe there's some kind of situation here with the clutches. I'm not quite sure. Let's see what happens if I fully remove this set screw. It's possible this thing is jammed and it might need to be replaced. Okay, take a look inside, guys. You see that? There is a spring there. This is literally how it works. There's a little ball all the way at the end. Now, usually these things get jammed, and this is where the problems happen. Right now, I am nearly flush with line A. So let's see. Half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. You know what? I'm going to probably leave it at 2.5 because I wanted to engage earlier. So I'm not going to take their advice on this one. We're going to see if it actually engages at all. Right now, I'm going to assemble all of this back. Ideally, I just want to check whether my adjustments did anything at all. It is my opinion that more than likely these clutches will need to be replaced. I've dealt with 2-speed transmissions before, and usually if they don't shift with these basic adjustments of the set screw, there's something wrong mechanically inside the clutch. The spring looked like it was okay, the ball at the end looked like it was okay, but after long periods of not being used, this is just one of those things that happens, and this unit is not serviceable at all. This clutch cannot be disassembled any further than what you actually see it already is. You saw that it actually is kind of easier to work on. If it wasn't for this video, this is literally like a 3 to 4 minute type of job if you know what you're doing, especially if you've done it before. No big deal at all. Unfortunately, if there is some kind of damage from not being used and not being engaged into second or third gear over the years, then no matter what adjustment I make, no matter what factory setting I put, it really won't matter. I'm gonna have to replace the clutches. The only way we're gonna test this out is obviously we're gonna have to start it up. We're gonna have to do a couple speed passes, and you know I don't mind doing that.